Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend partner, and I feel like I almost don't even need to say this anymore, but he's known to some as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, coming to you right from Rapid City like every week, or most weeks, not every week.
Most weeks. Sometimes
I'm coming right from Denver. Those are always special moments for me, Todd.
Those are special moments. I enjoy when you're here with me.
So how you doing? City. How you doing?
Good. Hey, you want to know what?
What?
There's 167 days until Christmas.
Oh my God. Santa's
from the time that we're recording this episode.
That's crazy. So yeah. Santa's workshop is going strong.
It is.
For all those little boys and girls listening. Your toys are being made as we talk.
What do you want for Christmas?
Oh my God. Maybe a SM7B microphone. Then I'll be like right uptown.
Then you'll be a pro podcaster.
That's right. That's what's going to make
it's
me
all
a pro.
In the equipment.
Yeah. How about you, Todd? What are you asking for Christmas? God, why are we talking about Christmas in July? That's awesome.
I don't want anything because I'm at a point where I want to just purge stuff out of my house.
Oh my God, I know that feeling.
I don't want any more stuff. I really don't. Not that I don't buy stuff and not that I don't still buy random stuff, but I really try to think about what I'm buying these days.
Yeah.
Because I just don't really want any more stuff.
Right. So here's something funny. I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but a couple weeks ago, I moved my mom in. And so I've been purging her stuff. And I woke up at like 4 a.m. on Sunday. And like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Because she's got stuff, and she got a little 1-bedroom apartment, but she got a lot of stuff. And then I was like not even a thought later, I was like, and then I got all my stuff. Why do I have all this stuff? What am I going to do with all this stuff? So yeah, I feel like purging is in my future. So anyway,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And your birthday's coming up.
It is in November.
November 28th.
That's right.
And this is a big one.
Yes. Oh my God. Really? We're going to start talking about that already?
I don't know. I just feel like it needs to be special. I was thinking about it today before we got on. I'm like, Wes's birthday is the end of November. And then I started thinking about Christmas. So that kind of popped in my head. So I was just curious how many days it was till Christmas, how many shopping days there was. And because there's some people that are buying stuff right now. But then I was like, it's his birthday and it's a big birthday. And so I was just curious. What's going to go on? You going to have some kind of special gala?
I don't know. I had a special birthday when I turned 50. So 60. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping it's kind of low key, under the radar. Let's keep it. Although I will take a trip with you and maybe, go to the Met in New York or something. That would be a special birthday.
Boy, that's kind of interesting thought.
Yeah.
We'll have to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
I thought there'd be like people out in the streets since it's, you live in lawless South Dakota, like shooting guns off and like maybe they'll name a street after you, Wes Brown Boulevard.
I'm hoping I get recognition from the governor because she knows how much of a fan I am of her. So anyway,
I need to talk to your wife. I think that this needs to be something special.
Okay.
We need to commemorate it somehow.
You know what would really make it special?
What?
If we started talking about art tonight.
Let's talk about art because that's why we're really here.
And we have somebody in the corner waiting for us.
I know. And she's very
awesome
patient.
too. I'm so looking forward to this. I'm always excited about our guests though, because Todd picked some really great guests. So this is going to be no different. I'm excited.
Did you say grass or gas?
Grass, I think I said. And Todd always picks
some really great grass.
Grass. Well, you are in Colorado. So Todd always picks really great guests, and today's going to be no exception. So there we go.
All right. Stretch out your mouth while I'm doing this next intro.
Should have did voice exercises before I came
right? Our guest this week is an out of this world. She's just a phenomenal artist that exudes creativity. I'm truly astounded of how her mind works, her process, and what she creates. She's a former Red Line artist in residence. She's been exhibited internationally, serves as an ambassador for Asian art at the Denver Art Museum, and operates a contemporary art project and residency space called Collective Small K in the Art District on Santa Fe here in Denver. You can check out her work on her website, studiosmlk.com, or find her on Instagram at Sammy_Seungmin, SEUNGMIN_Lee. Welcome to the program, Sammy. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for introduction. That was amazing. It sounded really good. Delighted to be here. Thanks for hosting me.
We're delighted that you're with us because I'll tell you what, we had to finagle a few things to our listeners as far as timing and life events. And so we're just really happy that you're willing to make this happen and spend some time with us this evening. Before we start, because of the kind of work that you do, and I always find it's better if the artist kind of explains it, take a moment and tell our listeners what kind of work that you do and what mediums you work in and with.
Well, my artwork is about my identity. So me being a mom of two sons are important. So I live in this motherhood of raising two boys, and while they're at school and in daycare, I spend 9 to maybe 4 o'clock, and that's when I work in my studio during the weekday. I'm very grateful. I have very kind of diverse exposures, experiences, and life experiences and educations. So I was trained in fine art, media art, and architecture. And while I was going through that, I also learned, I was very interested in bookbinding. So those are kind of my practices still now while I'm making installation pieces or sculptural pieces, or sometimes 2D works too. I usually do a lot of researches, and those are very research-based, personal kind of expressions. And out of those materials, those usually turn into some sort of book format too. So I work with many different, materials, many different formats that kind of reflects just everything that I dabbled into and turn it into art.
You've lived and worked in Denver for a while now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like 14 years now.
Wow.
But I came from, before Denver, we were in Boston area. And I arrived 8 weeks pregnant. So, and until that was our first son, my husband and I, we decided to, raise him at home for first 3 years. So that's when I kind of took a complete, a pregnancy, and maybe after his birth, 3 years, I was a stay-at-home mom raising him. Then when he started his daycare, that's when I started, working again. So I kind of had first 4 years in Denver. So I've been really working for about 10 years.
Was that difficult to take that first few years and not work on your art?
Since it was my first time being mom and having that identity as mom, I wasn't sure if I could just fully be a mom or I could do both. My husband and I, we didn't have any family or support system. We didn't have anyone to help us. But that wasn't just the only reason why we wanted to, for me to become a full-time mom. I just wanted to really give it a try, being full-time mom. But there are many times that, even in a very intimate moment of breastfeeding or, I would be kind of daydreaming about my art projects. And so I learned that I needed to be both mom and artist. So that first 3 years I really tried to be full-time, just being mom, but I realized that I needed to be both.
Obviously, you were thinking about art and things that you'd like to do, but it sounds to me like that was actually really fantastic in the meditative aspect of it. It being totally engaged with your first child and then having that time where you have those quiet moments where you can kind of just think about things, right?
Well, I'm not sure if I really had a quiet moment. Just wailing and screaming and with the all kinds of toys making noises. Those early learning whatever toys that you get, it just all try to engage in all kinds of senses. So I don't think I ever had a quiet moment, but I would still kind of fantasize. Whenever I had time. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. I really do.
But I was really trying to think deep about this because it was like mentally, physically, spiritually, all challenging time. Yeah. But I never really came out of it, but going through that phase, all the more I knew that I really wanted to, make art.
Yeah. It probably reinforced the fact that I truly believe creative people, especially the ones that do it for a profession, this is a part of who they are innately. And I'm sure that reinforcement, taking that time off to be a mom, and that's important, but it probably reinforces the fact that I am an artist and I need to create. And did you have that sense? Like it really reinforced that?
Yeah, and I actually needed to have several life events to kind of reaffirm that, because I thought that I was more left and right, brain balance person. So I was on the fence. So I entered UCLA as a fine art major, but I graduated with a media art, which is more design tilt. So there was actually job waiting for us when I, graduated with that degree. A lot of my, classmates went into, special effects or design firms, and it was like IT companies or .com companies. So there were actually job, and I was class of 98. I just revealed my age. So there was a huge .com, waiting for us, So I was very pragmatic and I really wanted to make sure this is what I wanted to do. So I took a kind of really big roundabout and detour to make this decision. So even me working as a designer in a .com companies, then I decided to go to architecture school, which was another kind of level of me kind of testing myself, okay, I'm just calling myself a more left and right brain person, like who thinks they're liking the parameters and more objective perspective. And, so I kind of went that direction too, but ultimately I came to art and experiencing the motherhood. That was kind of the strongest challenge. And I decided to do this.
Speaking of childhood, tell our listeners where life started for you.
My life started. Well, I was born and grew up in South Korea, and I came to the state at age 16. I am first generation immigrant, meaning that I chose to come without parents coming with us. But my brother was actually here a year earlier. And at that time, I think we're more in a mindset that we're going to study here. We may go back. But I came without parents with my own decision that I wanted to come here to study. Then I decided to stay. So a lot of I had to make kind of proactive choices once I arrived in the US, which was really nice and empowering. And I even gave myself a name too, which was very, very empowering. But my childhood in Korea was super fun. It was very academically intense and rigorous, and that's how it is. And I think most of Koreans and the culture, they work really hard and they play hard too. So that intensity and growing up in Seoul, which is very dense, was very dynamic. I was never bored. Yeah. My mom grew up with two sisters who study music, classical music. So she actually tried to veer me into studying piano. And initially I said I'd rather do visual art. So it was kind of like not defiance, but saying I'd rather, do something else that I choose. And that's what I chose to do, visual art. Because I think not just because I didn't want it to do piano, but I really enjoyed art from just, my exposures from different classes in elementary school. Then at fifth grader, I had to prepare myself for entry exam to more serious magnet schools. So I went to Art Magnet Junior High and part of high school. Then from that, I came to US. Yeah. And I landed in Orange County, California. And there was Orange County High School of the Arts, which was kind of a tag on magnet school program. So I just did regular school for the morning time. Then I think afternoon, maybe fifth period, we started maybe 2-3 different art classes, throughout the week. Yeah, but it was really nice program. And from there, I went to UCLA. So that kind of covered my childhood.
So where in Orange County did you live?
So I was in Irvine, and then I was in Cypress.
Okay. Yep. I used to live in Orange County I was born in Oceanside, California. But I was in the Marine Corps and I was stationed at El Toro. And so I lived in Orange County for a while. I love SoCal. That's awesome place, but it's kind of crazy there with all the people. So,
True.
And now I live out in the prairie in a town of 65,000 people. So there you go.
I didn't realize when you came to the United States that you came by yourself, that your parents had not come with you. That's pretty brave.
Yeah, my mom came, she flew out with me, and she helped me settle down with my brother, and set up whole situation. But I lived with my brother in an apartment, and and she was actually flying back and forth maybe twice a year, or sometimes every 3 months ish sometimes. It was a lot of back and forth for my parents from that point.
That must have been exciting and probably difficult as well, I imagine, right?
Yeah, now I think about it, as a parent, it was very brave for them too. And it's very difficult, to have the family separated like that. So I am very grateful for their sacrifice, financial, and kind of breaking that, household that way.
Yeah. When you came to the States, when you were back in Korea, did you study English? Did you have any English at all?
Back then, we started curriculum kind of incorporate foreign language from middle school. So from 7th grade, that's in Korean system. From 7th grade is middle school. So I had 7, 8, 9.5 years. So I had 3.5 years of English, but those are not really practical as much, actually. Yeah. So I realized quickly that the English that I learned from Seoul didn't really work.
Thank God you came from a country where they have a really phenomenal educational system. That probably helped you a lot, I'm sure, having that background and that kind of education when you came here to the United States.
Yeah. It's, there is both side of, it's a little too intense, but for me, I kind of thrived, in that intensity, and just the culturally how they value education. It was just natural that we kind of work hard at school. So it was good. I didn't really think about other option of not studying because everyone were kind of in it together. Yeah. So we were all miserable together, but we were trying to have fun.
That's awesome.
And now that you have children, how do you feel? You get to see firsthand, where you grew up to what the kind of education system that your kids receive these days. Is it comparable at all?
So I have 2 sons. They're 7.5 years apart. And with first one, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just trying this, then go completely opposite direction and trying something else. So, but I was really open to trying anything. And I was really try to honor and hear his desire, his wishes, what he wants to do. But then realize, because that's not really how Korea is, they kind of have very something structural, and they kind of give all just the one kind of model for the kids, and they just all try to kind of follow that up until they're a certain age, right? So I was trying to really open up all the doors for him. And I kind of see him nowadays, him not really opening any doors. So, yeah, I don't really know what is really good. I'm at a point that my son is rising eighth grader, and I reflect back and I'm not sure what I have done is right or not, but I'm just going to try to trust him and try to be a little bit more patient that he goes and open, one or two doors that he wants to go in and see, things. So I'm just kind of still waiting on him while I'm doubting. Did I do it right? I don't know.
Sounds like he's a typical American kid, waiting. Sometimes kids need a little push.
Yeah. So my experiences, kind of completely opposite, and made me all the more that I wanted to give him, his choice. But maybe there are too many choices.
Right.
Yeah, it's harder for him to make one or two choices out of that options.
That makes sense in a lot of ways. Like there's so many choices and you feel so overwhelmed. My 17-year-old is in the same place as your eighth grader. So, and I keep throwing stuff at him, just hoping something's going to stick. Like, hey, how about this? Hey, how about this? And, most times I get the eye roll or sometimes they just walk away from me. So,
oh my God, that's funny.
I keep trying. And so good luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know where you're at and I can commiserate with you as far as like wanting your kid to be successful. Like, I don't care what, I just want them to be successful. Like as long as they're happy and successful. A friend of mine told me one time, and he's a former attorney and did well for himself, but he had a bunch of kids and he's like, I don't send any of my children to private school. He's like, I could afford it, but in the end, I think your kids are going to be who they're going to be and they'll figure it out. And I watched his kids, some of which one of them is my godson, but all of them kind of struggle in their own ways. And then in the end, they all figured it out and they're all really successful people. So I think he was right on the money when he kind of gave me that tidbit of advice.
Yeah, it's really, they should really give that credit to the parents because it takes a lot of faith and patience to just painfully watch that process. Yeah. So that's great. I really want to do that.
So you went to university at UCLA and you get a degree in fine art and media studies. Is that it?
Media art.
Media art.
I started with fine art and I graduated with media art bachelor degree.
And then you headed to the University of Massachusetts Amherst for your degree in architecture?
Correct.
And what made you decide to pursue, after all that, what made you decide to study architecture?
So, yeah, I always felt like I was doubting, and it was a self-doubt. I didn't feel like I was like artist material. When I see my, other artist friends within my, art major friends, just that intensity. And I really envied that they were just so good and crazy and passionate about what they, with art that they were doing. And they just neglected almost everything else, all the other made like other studies that they had to do. It was kind of unbalanced, how I saw it. And I still wanted to be well-rounded. And I was telling myself, I still can do math. And I could still do science. And am I supposed to do art? So I was like really testing. I was a little bit self-doubting, intimidated with their, intensities. And I was almost kind of telling myself, and also my mom, she doesn't remember at all, but she was telling me that how I never carry around my sketchbook and always doodling like other, art students. And she kind of brought it up when I was writing like college essays and applying for college, like she was actually kind of asking like, you want to be a design major? And like, and that kind of stuck with me. And I was doubting myself because I think I was very cautious and careful and sometimes fearful of like just letting it go and experience that freedom in, artistic expression. So I was kind of holding myself back in that process. And I felt much more comfortable with design, having the parameter. So that's why, and I realized it later why I loved architecture and that kind of pulled me. But when I was actually making the decision to do architecture, it's because of maybe like there is definitely a kind of perception of architects that I saw, of course, the successful architects, they were doing everything. They weren't just, they were doing fashions or making furniture. They were designing, like record labels. Architects kind of had this mind, like a mentality of I could do everything. And that appealed to me as if there are like doing total art because they're balanced. They could do everything and they have their left and right brain balance. So I kind of thought that I was a good fit and I wanted to test it out.
Wow, that's really interesting. I love that. I mean, I love how you arrived to that decision, and then you seem like you just stayed true. You really have stayed true to yourself and your vision. Yeah, you had that moment of doubt, but you were like, okay, I'm going to explore this. And I think it's fascinating the path that different people take when they're pursuing art, an art life. So yeah. Any favorite architects?
I like Louis Kahn. Yeah, he's one of my favorite. And I like Jean Prouvé. He's French. He doesn't really call himself an architect. He calls himself like a builder. And his works are quite interesting to me too. I have many architects that I like, but and I think that kind of spatial quality is still very inspiring me in art making too. Todd, you've seen those installation pieces in the first floor of my current show, and those are kind of pretty much on out of that architectural spatial thinking, and like I said, how one way to see my work is I create portals, so the sense of space is very important. Yeah,
you definitely feel that and see that, especially at that show that I just got to experience with you at the Emmanuel Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up there, you were always drawing?
I had to draw a lot because, like I said, at fifth grader, once I made the decision to enter into art magnet school, I basically had to go like after school, like when it's done like around 3, then I'll ride bus to after school like art program. And I was actually, like start drawing at 4:30. And I was actually painting until 10 o'clock. Can you believe that? And I'll come home like 11 or sometime midnight.
Wow.
So that's every day. So I had to always draw. So maybe that's why I didn't leisurely carry around like sketchbook and doodle, because I didn't need to doodle. I'm always drawing anyway. But that's, how it started.
That's crazy that you were that young and spent that much time, practicing your art education. And that's just amazing.
And that's not really anything special and just personal experience. It's kind of how it is because there's an entry exam to get in, and it was very competitive. It's very hard to get into. So some kids started even earlier, but I kind of started as a 5th grader. So I have a 5th grader and 6th grader. So I had like almost 2 years preparing for this entry exam to start the program as a 7th grader.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a fun story to share. I usually get a lot of like responses. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have time to doodle. I would have doodled, Mom, but I didn't have time. Oh my God. And I want to mention real quick too, why you were just talking about sometimes feeling insecure about your where you want to be or being an artist, and I think that's a common thread. I know, growing up through my life, I've always had encounters of self-doubt. And now that I'm almost 60, a little bit more clarity, but now it's the clock is running. So now I'm going to have to work to 11 o'clock to midnight to make sure I can.
Actually, aging is great because it kind of gives you sense of urgency. And it also, the sense of confidence kind of comes together with it, which I found it kind of weird. But I liked it. I really liked it. I'm like, I just have to do this. Like, I don't have a lot of time to fool around and be unsure,
Right. No, I think it's important that our other artists hear this, because they're always going to be facing, am I good enough? And then having that moment like, why am I doing this? I suck. And then realizing, and we've heard this from other artists that are mature artists has been doing for years. Also, they feel like they've lost their mojo and they're wondering, where do I go from here? But then, it's just a momentary lapse and they're back at it. But yeah, I think it's important to hear. So I appreciate you saying that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
In addition to where you grew up, that influence, you also seem like you're pretty self-directed. Is that true? Do you feel like you're a pretty self-directed person?
I think so, yeah.
And you had that since you were a child?
Yeah. And I was just like thinking about it. Growing up in Seoul, I was very independent. But I think back then, probably a lot of people here, even growing up in like 80s and 90s, we are able to go anywhere with our parents, right? But and my son too, like whenever I take him to Korea, he gets on the subway system and he go to places and he go into store, buy things that he wants. He's very independent, even without the language challenges. He's not really fluent in Korean. He's not bilingual at all. So he becomes independent, but as soon as we come back, I have to go to Target with him. He kind of has to cross the street with me, just like I have to take him everywhere. So I don't know, but I remember like I was telling him like kindergarten, we had a school bus, but from first grader, I was wearing my backpack and I was going to my school, which was like 30-minute bus ride, like city bus. And I did that as of, 8 years old. And just riding bus, sometime alone or with friends, like you just look around, you see so many different people. I think that just taught me so much, how just everyone's life is so different. Like where we get off and get on is all different places, And I think naturally I became very independent, just daily living that way. And maybe, yeah, I'm sure it was like personality too. Like somebody doing things for me wasn't really fun. I really needed to learn my way. Yeah. So that was interesting. Yeah.
I think most kids, and it doesn't happen, I think, as much in the United States compared to other places around the world. But I think kids inherently want to be independent and they want to do things for themselves. And, we make mistakes a lot of times, especially in America, where I'm an example of it myself, where the parent kind of takes that experience away from the child. They think they're helping, but they're actually kind of hurting them in some ways because it's not giving them that independence or that sense of being able to do whatever they want to do or put their mind to it.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah.
I read something really interesting on your artist statement, and you had this Korean proverb that you reference, which I think is just wonderful. It is, "What use is 3 bushels of beads if none of them are threaded?" Can you talk about how that helps to guide you in your studio and your work?
Yeah. So that one really became meaningful when I decided to work again. So it was like right about the time my, first son was starting daycare. I just like look back my life, and because of my curiosity and because I had to be sure, I dabbled into, different, genre of art. And I picked up a lot of kind of skills along the way. And I saw them as beads, loose beads. Um, and I was just kind of looking at these beads, and I thought about that proverb, and I gave a lot of meaning into threading it and kind of trying to put that in a certain context and meaning to me. And I was wondering too, like why I got interested in bookbinding. Because like when you have loose pages, no matter how they are beautifully, printed, using lithography or whatever, how much work went into that piece, because those prints sell too, right? Those beautiful prints, but they become pages and it gets threaded. It get actually sewn and become a book, right? So books actually, unless you're really done with it, it's not book. As long as they're loose and the cover is not attached, they just look so incomplete. So there is like usually other arts, you kind of see process, how it's kind of forming. And there's sometimes very important decision that you need to make, which is when am I done with this, right? When do I just pull myself off from this process? So a lot of artists, we talk about, how do you know when you're done? But binding book, it looks just, it has to be done to be really complete with the project. And that was really attractive to me. I mean, I project a lot of like life into different art form that I do. And that's what I really needed. Like, while I was doing bookbinding, that was it was really teaching me life lessons, I guess. So I had this strong desire of wanting to thread these loose beads that I have collected throughout my life. And I really thought that would give certain meaning. So I created a book actually called Beads in My Hand, and that is currently displayed on the second floor of the show at the Emmanuel Art Gallery. And basically, it's an accordion fold book. And on one side, it has scanned, life scale scanned my hand holding loose beads. Well, actually, beads are actually added on to the page. So it's just a bunch of like my hand, a life scale. And the other side, there's a Rilke's poem titled Palm. And it's in large scale of palm with all these lines, palm, like a lines on your hand showing. So as I go through these pages, accordion fold, as the pages progress, I'm putting like, small number of beads and how one by one they are getting threaded. So it progresses as all these beads are getting threaded. And what's interesting is on the other side, when you're just looking at the enlarged palm with the lines, because you're threading, the thread goes in and out, and the thread on the other side is long enough, and the lines are actually forming and altering the natural lines that you have. So as I was actually making, and that wasn't something that I knew exactly how it was going to play out, but as I was making, I realized how that threading action from inaction is kind of altering predestined life, or fate or whatever, you think that's going to happen with your life. And that experience was very empowering. So that proverb kind of gave like stronger message, because I did this project with, starting with that proverb. So, and I really, live by that. I try to really I try to take action, and try to really create and try to have all this idea that's in my head to be realized by creating art. So that proverb really gave me kind of, like assurance that, it really means to thread and do something about it. With what you have given or what you have collected.
The show that you referenced at Emmanuel Gallery that you were so nice to meet me and kind of give me my own personal tour. I want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
When you walk in to the gallery, what are you going to see?
Well, you may actually see what's straight ahead, which is a street art cart. It's a cart that was inspired by street vendors, like food cart. So you may see that if you're just looking straight ahead, or if you're just kind of, turning your head left and right, and as you're walking in that way, if you're looking around, if you're just kind of wandering eye mode, then you may actually see two movable walls that I place to create some sort of entryway. And on that movable wall, you will see two 3 feet diameter mirrors. And one is yellow mirror on white wall. And the other one that's facing directly is golden mirror on yellow wall. So if you're actually passing by, you have to go through that. It's kind of like architectural intervention, I would call it. But if you go through that, you will see yourself infinitely repeated. So that's something that you may see and experience at the entry point.
And talk about the thought behind that, because I think it's very intriguing.
Yeah, last year was very difficult personally, and for many Asian American in the US, because there was a strong anti-Asian sentiment going on. So I think that, and I'm not really neurotic or really, I'm not really fearful person, but I'm a mom, and that mama bear side of me. And also, I was fearful for my children. And so that really limited me just going out, or, I stayed home most of the time, not because of the stay home, restriction, but voluntarily, because it was just very difficult to be out, and kind of that anticipation was so real to me that I just wanted to make sure that I was able to protect my children when I'm out, because school's off, so I had kids with me all the time, and I just also wanted to make sure that my own dignity would not be shattered in front of my children. So in many senses, all these thoughts kind of prompted me to mostly stay indoor, which was difficult. So that was kind of when this opportunity kind of coming out of this pandemic, or although we're not really quite through yet, I'm very grateful for the curator, Jeff Lamson, giving me this opportunity to just express myself, to experience this sense of freedom. But I wanted to start the entry point to make a statement, in a way, or to kind of share the mindset. And in Asian architecture, one thing that I, think about is that how in a traditional Korean entry point, threshold is higher and the beam is lower. So it's very smaller entry, that you have to go through. So you have to kind of contract your body. So you'll be kind of bowing, and you're making your body smaller. And I took that gesture as maybe a sense of respect for what's inside. It's a person who's in the space, or the idea, so I'm just kind of expanding that thought. So I wanted to kind of prepare the, mindset to see what's inside. So sharing about my current experience about just basically all the show is really about identity works, the theme. So for them to really understand, I wanted to take that opportunity at the entry to kind of get to share, my mindset of what I'm thinking. And those two mirrors, and seeing yourself infinitely repeated between two spaces, because the mirror, the one yellow mirror, it actually says the word here underneath, and facing mirror says soul. So these are two home, where I call home. But you're essentially getting rejected or you're bounced back. You're just getting infinitely bounced back from those two places. And where I belong is really that floating space in between. So I just wanted to visually kind of explore that idea. And I didn't know it was how it will be because it was my first time trying it. So I installed it and saw myself in the mirror. And I'm trying to look at myself and have eye contact with myself in the mirror. And if you experience it, you'll know it's very disorienting. You cannot see yourself and you cannot even have eye contact with yourself, looking at yourself. So that's actually all the more, I think it was very successful trying to explain that kind of whole psyche of what I went through and what I'm still going through. Yeah.
I love that piece. And once you shared with me that experience at the gallery, it resonated with me. And I'll tell you why in just a second, but I never thought about it that way as far as like, you feel like you don't really belong to either culture at this point, right? Like you don't really feel like you belong here, but you don't really feel like you belong in Korea. You're kind of stuck in this limbo, right?
Yes. Because I was born in Korea, I thought I could always go back and I could always feel at home. But more and more, I feel distant from that too. It's slightly different than second generation who were born here. It's really here is their home. But for me, I spent 16 years of my time there too. I was born there, so and Korea changes very fast. And it was funny because like when I go and have talk with people, and they could pick it up right away that I'm not from there. And like somebody was like kind of jokingly telling me like, hey, I could tell you're either a spy from North Korea trying to pretend like try to fly like, out of the under the radar and try to talk like one of us, but like pretty much all your thing, all the vocabulary words that you're using is like at least like 30 years older, I'm like, yeah, I feel outdated, irrelevant, but it was a really funny and joking, manner. Not, they're really trying to like
offend you or insult you.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. So we're all laughing, but I'm like, yeah, I know, Yeah.
It's interesting, the whole thought behind it. And then, hearing about that, and you're not the first person that we've talked to on the podcast where people have come from elsewhere in the world and now they're having this America, United States experience or whatever, but they too just feel like they're kind of in this limbo, like they don't really belong to either place. And it's just interesting because unless you experience it firsthand, I don't think you understand, right? And until you have this dialogue with somebody that does have this, and you're like, oh, I could totally see why that would be that way,
Correct. Yeah.
Your pivotal years growing up were all spent in Korea, but then you left at a very pivotal age and come to the United States, and that's a whole different experience than where you came from, and the culture, the way that people interact and do things, it's just different, right?
Correct. Yeah. I am grateful that I had very unique experience of, experiencing multicultural, but there are times that I get sentimental. I'm like, but I ask myself question, do I really need to belong a singular place, But whenever I fly back and forth, sometimes I think about how, when you're on the plane, you get really disoriented with the time changes, right? And in that glimpse of moment, you realize that you actually really need to belong to one singular place. That's why you're so disoriented, because you can never be in two places at the same time. So as much as I think a lot about that, sense of belonging. So I think it's great that I'm an artist and I could continue to explore this idea and kind of make it into art form. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's a metaphor for your experience, and that helps other people see what you're feeling are going through. So yeah, I think that's important. And just think of the people that don't have that creative outlet that are experiencing the same thing. This gives you I think this gives you more freedom to maybe understand it or to face it. Maybe
it gives you an outlet, right?
Yeah. I mean, for Wes, for you, like you lived in California and now you're in, Rapid City.
Yeah.
Do you think about, do I really belong here? Do I belong in California?
Yeah. So I grew up here, and then I was born in California and I've moved around a lot. So I've been displaced quite a bit. This last trip to South Dakota has been 15 years, I think, roughly, give or take. So it's been the longest I've lived in any one place. But and I did a fair amount of traveling. I've actually been to Korea and Japan and Okinawa. I was in the military. So, but yeah, there is kind of a sense of displacement when you're constantly moving, but not to the extent of what you experience. I think it's a different level. But yeah, I know what you're saying though, because I love the city life, but then the rural part of me, I really enjoy being kind of somewhat isolated and being in the hills or whatever. But I think a lot of people do. So I think it's really cool that you have this outlet to explore that and to help other people figure it out. Because I think the metaphor of the mirrors being stuck in the middle, like when you explained it, I totally got it. I totally got what it's like to be an immigrant, even to choose to come here, and where you don't really belong yet, and then you can't really go home because like you said, there's been these multiple year span that you haven't lived in that culture. So I thought that was pretty interesting when you said that they compared you to North Koreans because you were 30 years behind of where you were linguistically or whatever. So I thought that was interesting. But
yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
I'll tell you how that piece resonates to me is, so I'm adopted, right? This is just a recent conversation that I had with another guy who I had no idea. He's about the same age as me. He also is adopted. And we had this conversation that I've never had with anybody else because I don't know, but just because I don't know that people really understand when you're adopted, you always feel, and he kind of confirmed this, and maybe not all people experience this that are adopted, but you feel like you don't necessarily belong anywhere. Like you don't know where you're from. These people are not necessarily where you come from, but that's kind of your identity and who you relate to. But at the same time, you feel a little separated from that as well, if that makes any sense. So you always feel like, and I explained it this way, I feel like I could have been an alien. Like I was just dropped here by aliens on this planet, and I don't really belong anywhere, and I don't really know where I belong. And he had the same exact kind of feeling. Like he always felt like he was kind of like, didn't really, even though he had a great a family that he was adopted into, and as did I, you just feel like you're always like, you don't belong in any particular group or with any particular people. And he had the same experience in that he floated in a lot of different circles growing up. Like he was never like, even though he's a musician, he never felt like he was necessarily just part of the music kids or band kids. And he just didn't feel like he belonged necessarily anywhere. He was kind of his own being, kind of walking through the universe. Mm-hmm. So when you describe this thing, I can relate to it on that level. And then I feel like when you describe it, I can relate on some level, how it must feel to be stuck kind of between two cultures, It's different, but in some ways it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you feel like you're rejected from both, right? And during my architecture school, we had a project actually to design like an Alzheimer facility. And we actually the professor encouraged us to think about the sense of home. And that's where you belong, right? And we had to do a project about kind of with that sense of home, because that relates to, that helps the Alzheimer patients in the facility. So they were trying to really make that center as domestic as possible and to appeal to their sense of home, most of their patients. So it was very homey. There will be like a rails and, beadboards and, to their age group, catering majority of the age group. And it was very homey. All the material, like wood paneling, wallpapers. It was not like an institution. It was very homey. And they were explaining how that is really helping the patients for their stability and their wellness. Then that kind of made me realize what's my sense of home, right? Because it's really, important. It's related to your wellness, So I think that's kind of why I became more aware of it too, that I wanted to really feel like it's my home somewhere. Yeah.
So was that project difficult for you? Did you really have to like dig deep to kind of figure out what that means to you?
Yeah, it was at the same time, it was really fun too. That was the first time that I sat down. I was 32 and I sat down and counted all the places that I lived longer than 6 months, at least 6 months. And it was like 26 times. And I'm not military, kids. I moved around so many times. And so I realized, a lot of projects that other students brought had to do with the, actual physical element of their childhood home. Most of them were kind of based on that. But for me, it was more like certain lighting conditions, certain smells, it was very fragmented. So my sense of home is not anything really substantial. It's all little fragments that kind of enable me to feel at home. So I thought, whoa, then I'm like highly adaptable. So I have a lot of materials to work with when I talk about using that for my art project.
So I got a question, if you don't mind. So when in the process of trying to figure out what this art installation piece with the mirrors is going to be, did you have the mirrors in mind first and then trying to figure out what it meant? Or did you have this, like, I really want to explore the sense of not belonging and how can I express that? Did it come in that sense?
I knew that I wanted to make that entry to make certain statement because that's, and I didn't it's kind of like a little fireworks that just kind of, three things just kind of happen together. So I wanted to do something with the entry. And when you enter a home, like even in the US, people usually put mirror in front of, if you open the front door, they usually place mirror. That's pretty custom. I see that all the time, and especially because I was recently looking for houses and I do the show, not the showing, but I was looking at different houses. Mostly I see people putting mirrors. And I think that is not a good feng shui in Eastern culture because they believe it reflects the good luck or good energy coming into your house. It's kind of reflecting back. So I was thinking about, I want to make entry and I want to incorporate mirror. Then I thought about this feng shui of kind of reflecting back. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm reflected back. I feel like I'm bounced back from here and there. And I really wanted to kind of play with that idea of feng shui too. And I learned that in feng shui, putting two mirrors actually facing each other is no way. You cannot do that because exactly that infinite reflections happen, right? And they almost see it as if your soul's getting sucked into this portal. And that's visually what's exactly happening too. So I kind of wanted to do what was not really allowed to do and what kind of has that connection to that domestic entry point of having, like a round mirror, at the entry. But because I wanted them to experience it as they walk in, I, just kind of rotate it in a way that it is really aligned with the entry and they'll see themselves.
That's brilliant. I love it. I when you said it's going to be done on the 6th. No, what?
17th?
July
17th.
17th. Yeah. And I will be actually there during the whole gallery hour, which is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. To do a few different exercises with people. I really want to meet people. And there's actually different ideas of labor, which is very closely linked with identity. So I'll be kind of carrying out different labor that is integral part of my art making. So people will come and they'll pound papers with me from like maybe 10 to 11. And like from 11 to 12, people will kind of set tables with me, which is another projects that I have going on. Then we have like a maybe singing bowl. I have a lot of bowls and dishes there to set tables. So we'll make some musics and we'll have lunch out in the outside installation area. So I want to spend the whole day and doing, carrying out, my process with the visitors during that day as a kind of closing event.
Yeah.
Really wanted to, meet people and engage them.
That's awesome. I love that. That's really great.
Yeah. That's fantastic. This whole show that you have currently at the Emmanuel Gallery, it's very, and as with most art, it's very personal, kind of delves into your whole personal history as a person. And you share that disconnect between your two cultures, but also there's definitely a connection to your Korean culture as well. And that plays a huge part in this, at least in the, well, it plays in all your work, but at least that the bottom part of the gallery really focuses on all that.
Correct. Yes.
When you walk past the that initial entrance there with the mirrors, you end up walking almost into this big pile of suitcases that are stacked from floor to ceiling. Talk about that, if you would.
Okay. So Todd, when you came in, the suitcases were in tower format, or were they all collapsed?
They were in tower format.
Okay. So
are they no longer like that?
No, they were down. So yeah, it's a piles of suitcases, and I almost wanted to like get some consultants on how to pile them up from those rock piling people, because it's kind of really tricky to balance it because they're not like hard case and they're stuffed too. So there are soft case suitcases, various sizes from large, medium, small. And one of them is actually the actual suitcase that I brought with me when I came to the US at age 16. So those are all different size, shaped suitcases piled up kind of like architectural monolith, kind of wedged in between floor to ceiling. So they were temporarily stable, and they're not dangerous because since they're kind of wedged with tension, they're going to gradually collapse. So I knew that it was going to collapse. So by the time Todd came in, it had collapsed once. And we had an opening reception June 17. That was a Thursday. And Friday morning, it was collapsed when we opened the gallery. It was something that would happen overnight because it would gradually kind of lose balance and lean and kind of collapse. But each suitcase are symbolize immigrant or immigrant narrative. And how immigrant views the suitcase, as I was only allowed to bring like 2 check-ins and 1 carry-on, it is like really consolidating your life, before you immigrated, right? And you're really seriously thinking about what can I live without? Because editing out process is even more difficult, right? Obviously, I had gone back to Korea many, many times, since then. But still, when I was making that choice, as 16 years old, I still had to really. It was a serious decision, and it was emotional decision because I'm really parting with decision, and this could be just lifetime decision too. So I really believe that each immigrant narrative are very unique just like the contents of these suitcases. And I wanted them to all stand together in this format, but I knew that we're going to fail. But I am committed to showing it that way for a week. So that's what I did. All those suitcases were actually collapsed almost like a domino. But it was very directional. So I clear out on that direction, knowing that it was collapsed that way. And I once that happened, I taped, around that shape, to document that fall. And the following week, I restacked them back into that. So I have done that restacking process twice so far. So if you go back there, you will see all the taping on the floor. That's showing how it fell.
And talk about what you did to these individual suitcases.
Yeah, I mean, they're all black suitcases. Ironically, none of them, I think only one or two of them are black suitcases. They're like red, different shades of gray, one like leopard skin. But I all wrapped these suitcases in black because, again, this is identity project. And, when you're at the airport, at those like a conveyor belt, the luggage pickup area, you hear the message, like a message repeated over and over, that how all bags look alike, this anonymous black bag. So make sure you check, tag, right? So that's how I feel about immigrant, as much as contrasting the content of it, their unique life story that has been consolidated inside the suitcases. Actually, upon arrival, they become anonymous. And if they're not really placed right next to you, while you're grabbing the other bag, it could be treated as like a terrorist threat or something, So that's kind of how I view these suitcases like immigrant.
And describe all of them are covered with something.
Yeah. So what I do is what's the very first process is I make what's called paper skin. So I'm layering many like sheets of paper, and I wet them, soak them, kind of go through a laundry like process, soak, and I agitate fiber, I crumple or throw some time, or wrung it, or I do all this kind of fiber agitating process to interlock the fiber to create felted, like a singular much thicker substrate. And it behaves like skin, like animal hide. I could use that to cast, I could, it has that very nice tactile quality. So I first make that. So all these suitcases are wrapped with the black paper skin that I created. And they become very expressive. Some of them are very wrinkled, and some of them are really showing kind of tears and damages, and I kind of paint it with the varnishes to make them look wet. And this wetness that you see, because it reflects light differently, the sheens, different sheens that makes appear as wetness, represent like sweat or tears. So it has much more emotional quality because I use that paper skin, and I use that to opportunity to really express that, through that.
And the process that you used, it's a traditional Korean process. Is that correct?
It is a laundry process. So it's a domestic labor that I adopted and reinvented, because once I knew that it was basically a way of stressing the fiber to make them interlock, I just thought the pounding would be really effective way. And since it was a domestic labor that was, it has a rhythm and it has kind of cathartic pounding, that action was actually very it's very pleasant labor to do, and it was actually kind of favored by women in pre-industrial era, that they enjoy doing it, between sisters and between mothers. They will just kind of face each other and pound if in their case, it was a cloth, or starched, clothing, to give extra sheen or to consolidate fuzz, fibers. But I just reinvented to felt paper. So what I create, how I create paper skin is, I'm borrowing this technique, but it's not really how they were using it, do what I do.
That's
I think
brilliant.
It's really, yeah. It's really interesting. There's a name for the paper, is that, or the process?
Paper is, it's called hanji. Basically,
Hanji, that's right.
Han means Korean, Ji means paper. So basically it means Korean paper. And yes, it was actually all Korean papers and mulberry fiber. So there's one kind, just that how they make it, sometime different thickness, different colors, but it's all same fiber. So it's a hanji.
And why the mulberry fiber? You would kind of explain that to me.
So mulberry is what's really abundant in Korea too. So they're everywhere, and they don't have to actually cut it down. They are basically pruning it, so they're not actually killing the tree, and they're also aggressive plant, I heard too. So they're abundant material, but actually the labor process is very lengthy. Well-made, properly made paper actually go through like 100 steps from them cutting it, they pruning it, and they have to actually like soak it, like steam it, and they have to pound it, and they have to peel it, and it's just like there are just so many process. So it's a labor intensive, but the pounding is different than how we add like chemical, or we cut fibers with, I'm talking about the Western paper. It actually destroys the fiber, during the process. But steaming and pounding it, not cutting, which is different, actually it makes a fiber to stay as a long and strong fiber. So again, the properly made paper is supposed to last like almost 1,000 years. So there are books that is remaining that is like, almost like 1,000 years old in Korea. So it's very archival, very strong. And because of its very fine, thin, and long fiber that is strong, I'm able to felt it. If I were to do the same process with Western paper, it will fall apart immediately. Yeah. So it works because I'm using mulberry fiber paper.
And very labor intensive, it sounds.
Making, so it is kind of interesting because there is like a little bit of divine quality that people attribute into this material the paper in Korea, in East Asia. So because there's so much, and number 100 actually gives that, it makes it legit. There's so many of labor that add to make this perfect paper. Now the paper is kind of revered as if it has that kind of quality, spiritual, divine quality, right? So for me, actually, I'm not making paper at all. I'm starting with a ready-made paper and kind of doing reversal process of wetting it again and pounding it again to almost go through destructive process to regenerate into another substrate. I kind of find the process kind of interesting. I'm starting with something is perfect to make my art, by kind of putting it back into water. So it is something, I really enjoy that process of kind of undoing what seems to be perfect.
And this is where you get me, because it astounds me, the thought process that you go through in producing these beautiful works of art, the thought behind it, and then the process itself. It's fascinating. So Jumchi, is that the name of the paper making process? Did I pronounce it properly?
So Jumchi, yeah, you pronounce it well. And that is actually, so there was actually this technique of felting paper that existed. Just the way I do that process by pounding using that laundry process is what I reinvented. So jungji process was kind of like a traditional domestic craft, woman's craft to recycle paper, because as I said, paper was used with the abundant material, but just labor intensive. And paper was used everywhere as a flooring material, as a wallpaper, like a window screen. It was like Korean people would live inside, kind of technically wrapped around paper. And when they die, funerary clothing was in paper too, like the same mulberry paper. So they live and die surrounded by this paper. But when they need to redo their new wall covering, they will try to like peel it off, as cautiously as possible. And then they do this process of wetting it again and try to make like little craft. They will make little wallet and they'll make portfolios. And so these are women who made that. But what's interesting is at one point, there is a record 600 years ago during Joseon Dynasty, they were actually using this very technique. They made armor. So people were felting, and 13 plus layers of felted papers will be sufficient to protect themselves during fight. And they were actually preferring, so they were kind of saying the civilian, like infantry, they were equipping themselves by doing this and making the, paper armor and wearing it, because it was a lot lighter than, metal or leather armor. So there's a record that this technique was used to make armor. And I must say that I am going to be in a part of a show exhibition that's opening also in July 30th at Center for Visual Art in Santa Fe Art District. They have an armor show, and I'll be actually showing some of the paper work in that show with that theme.
Wow.
But it's fascinating that just a fragile piece of paper transforming through this process, lots of labor, into something like armor, something that could protect you, So that idea of transformation with your labor is very intriguing to me. And kind of, I try to justify sometimes like, my process is so time consuming, and I'm like, can I just cut ways? And there are times that I even put the paper into the laundry machine to see what happened, or just kind of, take some shortcut to save some time. But I think it just has to take time, that is really what's making this transformation. I think it just makes sense to do it this way.
It truly is amazing. And I think it's fascinating, everything that you're able to do with it, and in the Korean culture, what they do with it. And so we didn't really discuss it when I was there, I don't think, at the gallery with you that one day. I was kind of thinking about how much paper plays into all this work. And I'm like, okay, so what is the connection to paper? I knew that the process was Korean, but I didn't realize that, this mulberry fiber paper was hanji, right?
Hanji.
Correct.
Yep.
That it played into so many aspects of people's lives in Korea. So that's just amazing. And that you've been able to take the substrate, this material, this paper material, kind of reverse engineer it, I guess, for lack of a better description, and then make it your own and make these phenomenal things.
Yeah, what's interesting is that, we see paper as almost we minimize it as a carrier of information or story on it. We mainly use it to write on the surface, right? But I think except that very thing, I'm doing everything else using paper. But ultimately, I'm trying to tell a story. And it's very, just if you are holding a piece of paper, instantly it creates sense of, sight, right? Maybe interiority, exteriority, just by having that piece of paper. It is a membrane, that makes what's inside and outside. So just having that piece of paper, there is already kind of sense of space, and sense of identity, Yeah, I use it, wrap it, I cast it and hollow out object, become sculptural object. And I almost I do the rubbing like a fruit touch, I use so many ways with it. But I find it interesting that I don't really draw on it or write on it. Yeah, so that's what you will see when you come and see the show, that you will see everything else except works on paper.
Yeah, I mean, it's works of paper, but not
Yeah.
necessarily works on paper.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm saddened by that, not having that category, like when I have to enter projects, for different like exhibitions or like applying, there are categories for works on paper. But yeah, I don't know how can, be categorized where I belong. I don't know.
Right. I mean, it's so unique. And that's, I think, what's mind blowing when you walk through the gallery and then talking with you or reading about it, telling these amazing stories visually, but without the written word.
Mhm.
And you do it so well. And the thought behind it, again, like it really is mind blowing because I've never seen anything like it. So I can see when you try to enter different art competitions or exhibits or whatever, and they want to categorize you, why it would be so difficult. It's like, okay, well, I don't fit. I might fit in a little bit over here and a little bit over there, but I don't really fit into any of this stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly the identity problem, right? That I've been talking about. But thank you very much for your very kind and generous comment. Yeah, I appreciate it.
New Magazine is our media sponsor for the Tenet podcast. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening. I want to talk about another piece here. I just think it's wonderful. And it really, one of my favorite pieces in the gallery. It's called Mama Bot, right?
Yeah, that's the work from the pandemic time.
Talk about this piece and kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah, Mama Bot, it's series. There are 2 additional works. It's currently 3, series of 3. And the one that's currently at the Emmanuel Gallery is Mama Bot version 2. And that one is actually about me going through this motherhood. And there's a version 1 is actually about my mother as a mother. And version 3 is Ma parenthesis Ma Bot. And that is actually, it's my story as 16 years old. So there are 3, Mama Bots. It's all kind of continued. It's somewhat cyclical because my mother, she views me as extension of her life, right? And she thinks just because she had cancer, I may have it. So I need to really watch on the diet. So, she thinks that I'm kind of continued, really extended, different version of her. I don't have a daughter. I only have 2 sons. So, I don't have that kind of cyclical story, but I have that 16 years old. When I came to US, that's it. That's kind of me becoming independent of who I am, kind of, not anymore, under my parents' protection, right? So I'm just kind of seeing these 3 Mama Bots in relationship to each other. Maybe they're, having dialogue. But this particular one it's a current time of me as a mother. And it is wrapped. These are basically actually, I don't know how many photo frames, but it's many photo frames with photos of my children. And there are also photos of my children's artwork, but it's all related to, couple of them are actually my birthing experience and their first photo out of myself. But it's all related to my motherhood and my children. So they're in each photo frames, but they're put together in a way. So all these individual memories are kind of put together, kind of like how those robots kind of come together. All these parts kind of, come together and become this robot figure. And then it's wrapped with paper skin and they're black paper. And I try to, be very expressive with the textures, but they almost mimic either like a hairs or scar skins with different openings. And how I made it, those openings are just kind of really tearing with my fingers, pulling and tearing when it's wet over that glass surface of the picture frame. So how, the gesture of making is very kind of, painful. Like you're just kind of tearing it apart. That's how it's made. But from those opening, what you actually see through is like cutest, like sweetest, photos of my kids, like them smiling or they're showing me heart or the art project they made for me. So those are kind of the hints. And that is kind of very bright colors that you see through openings. It almost kind of appears as a light through these openings. And as if those are some sort of like energy powering this, Mama Bot to go on. But Mama Bot overall, I want it to look very heroic. It has this feathered headpiece and it has brushes, kind of like tails. Yeah, it has a kind of mythical quality, but heroic qualities because I'm that person to my children at this moment. I'm getting all these things done, for them, and I rescue them, and so it is not really depressing story, but there is a sense of reality of I feel loss of femininity here. I feel the loss of my individuality as a person, but that's kind of, it is a self-portrait on me.
How big a piece is that?
It is like, with the headpiece, probably 6 feet. So it is kind of like my size with this, headpiece.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really exquisite. I like it.
Yeah.
It's really arresting. And like I said, it's one of my favorite pieces that I saw in the gallery. I don't know. It's very striking. And then hearing you talk about it and how it came about, I love it. Yes,
this piece will be in Armor Show at CVA along with 2 other Mama Bots. So you will see the Trinity.
Oh, fantastic!
At CVA, yeah. Come visit again, yeah.
I look forward to seeing all 3 of them together. That'll be really great.
Thank you.
Those 3 Mama Bots, they're what you're putting in there, or are there other pieces as well?
There will be other armor pieces. I try to create different kind of armor inspired pieces made with hanji. So there will be like 3 additional pieces. Yeah. And
if you go to Sammy's Instagram, you can see pictures of some of this work from the Emmanuel Gallery that's currently on display, and obviously will be on display again at CVA. I want to talk about you mentioned that in the very beginning when we started talking about the exhibition, the art cart.
Yeah, sure. Art cart is kind of out of my fantasy of becoming like financially successful and sustainable, and also I'm looking at myself as aging female artist. I wanted to have something very compact, manageable, as minimal as possible, and also portable. And I also have experiences of like traveling, different part of the world and see other like small business owners on the street those older ladies just kind of cooking, and all they needed is just little stool and a pot, and they whip out something amazing, and they're raising their children, who knows how many. And like, I just always kind of wanted to be very compact and efficient and sustainable. So that was kind of out of that fantasy, I created this cart. Carts are actually segmented, and you can pull it apart. It disassembles and assembles again. It takes 15 minutes to put it back, and they all go into a suitcase. It kind of reflects my nomadic identity. So I feel very empowered creating this, because I feel like with this I could go anywhere in the world, and I have a place to work. I have a place to make art. I have a place to sell art and be successful and sustainable. So it was kind of that idea out of my kind of hopeful, optimistic thinking. Because when I made it was when I was actually exiting from Redline and losing that amazing studio space. Because it was actually beyond studio. Like, I had actually my studio already, but it just kind of makes me think about that artist space all the more, just that relationship and being connected to other artists and that network and the world. And this was kind of a fun problem solving solution that I came up with while I was exiting Redline.
I love the thought behind it, and the fact that you can tear it down and it all fits into a suitcase is amazing.
Yeah, and it is there right now at the gallery to carry out kind of ambitious project, but it is quite efficient workspace too. I've been able to do this project out of the space, and it is really, all I need. Quite happy working out of the space too.
And talk about that project that you're facilitating with the art cart.
Yeah. So what I have on the art cart, I have a bunch of Korean serving vessels. If the listeners are familiar with the Korean food, Korean cuisine, we have specific, serving vessels for each element that we're serving. So we have a lot of bowls and dishes to present for simple lunch, usually maybe at least 11, little dishes that makes a simple meal. So I have those kind of basic set there, and I invite anyone, volunteer visitors who's willing to do this with me. They have to think of someone special in their life. So that's a kind of first prompt. They have to think about somebody, and then they have to set up a meal for this, set up an imaginary meal using Korean serving vessels. So because they start with someone special in their life, the meal that they want to serve becomes very specific. And most of the time, it's not Korean meal. So they have to problem solve, create. They have to use their creativity. They have, Mexican, lunch that they're setting up for, a grandmother. How are they going to serve all those, where they're going to serve tortillas and shredded chicken and, two different salsas, everything, how are they going to make that fit? And they know exactly, they have a memory. They remember how it was exactly served to them and why that is special. They have to kind of reinvent it, using, because this is what's given. And it is very similar to the immigrant experience, which I had gone through. I had 7 years taking to find this bowl to serve family noodle bowl recipe. So I'm just kind of giving them opportunity to ask me lots of questions and figure this problem. And usually it takes less than, 5 minutes, but, they ask questions sometime what is this used for? And I say, this is used for grilled fish. Can I use that, maybe to serve ice cream sundae or, guacamole? It becomes something different. And instead of them just kind of grabbing, they usually ask questions, which I didn't anticipate it, but it's really pleasant, because instead of they just culturally appropriating, there is more of the real authentic exchange happening. they'll probably walk out learning, so much more about the Korean food and Korean cuisine. And they are usually walking away happy solving that problem. Were able to, set a perfect Jewish meal for, someone special out of what's provided. So it's kind of very pleasant, a safe kind of exercise that is enjoyable. And it tickles sense of empathy, which I think all the more we need at this time. So I have been very much enjoying the process of doing this. And I currently want to set up, I want to have 100 casts in paper with a paper skin. So I've been recording all these meals that people have been setting. I've been taking photo and taking notes to do that project.
Talk to us about what the catalyst was to start down this path where you set out this meal. Tell me that story, because you shared with me in the gallery this experience.
Project has evolved over several years, but for me, the very first project that I made was a meal cast that I've done, was my own meal that I had the first evening that, arrival of the US. And my aunt, who had been in the state for like at least 25 years then, gave me a big plate, and she set up all these Korean dishes, food as a buffet setting. And she told me, okay, go get what you want, how much amount that you want on the plate. And that was kind of a little shocking to me, because we are kind of served exactly how, my mom would prepare, with everything in the little dishes, and she's served that way. And that's, how I eat. But I felt kind of, whoa, this is kind of cool, because sometimes when you're just given exactly how you're going to eat, you have a pressure of finishing everything that is given to you, right? But now you're choosing what you want and how much amount of food that you want. So I thought that was very American. And I was like, but I was looking at this large plate with like kimchi and bulgogi and sauce mixing and soy sauce over like rice, it getting all, my rice was getting all kind of, like saucy. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I like it, but I guess this is kind of how you become Korean American. So that was kind of remembrance of my first meal in the US. So that was out of that, I made this Korean American meal. That was my first meal project. So from that, since then I thought about, all these serving vessels, how they are really representing culture, that culture, how it is served. There is a sense of etiquette, and even there is a gender role philosophy, like a whole Korean food is based on like a pretty serious philosophy of balancing whole universe into it with textures and elements and all that, right? So that's why it's very deftly prepared. That's why you better finish everything that's given to you, right? So all this culture, layers of different ideas that gets in, and serving vessel that is actually containing it. I just really love that idea that, maybe I want to kind of evolve this into more of a cultural, maybe cross-cultural project. So that's been kind of, how it has been evolving, and now it became a next level of doing this 100, meal cast, embodying all this different demographic of a community and becoming a community table project, that is like a participatory. And so this project has been ever growing since that very first Korean American meal setup that you will also see at the Emmanuel Gallery.
It's so well thought out, and I love it. I love the connection of food, because food is that thing that connects us no matter what, right? I have sat at a table with people from halfway across the world, and I didn't speak a single word of their language, and for the most part, vice versa. And yet we were able to share an experience in a meal, and we were connected for that time that we were together, right? Breaking bread together connects people.
Yes. And we have really missed that, during the pandemic time too. But it would be really nice that we are like truly able to do that, connect with people Yeah.
I want to talk one more piece of the show that's on the bottom floor of the Emmanuel Gallery. And this one,
Is it Changing Station?
yeah, I want to talk about Changing Station, and because it's very interesting. It's also another one of the large installations in the gallery. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this project was originally done as a commission piece for Black Cube Nomadic Art Museum, curated by Courtney Maisdell. And the theme was actually commerce, like Amazon. It was titled as a fulfillment center, and it was opportunity for artists to think about that capitalism, and almost labor is, and that person behind the labor is kind of extracted, omitted. We click a button, then things just show up at our doorstep, right? So we had kind of interesting a challenge of think about the fulfillment center and create our project. And I wanted to use that opportunity to contrast labor, what is most intimate and personal labor. So I just wanted to contrast it with that, with the labors that is unseen, through this e-commerce and warehouses and Amazon and whole system. So, obviously that motherhood having gone through that, I thought about that diaper change, which is way too frequent change, and it's a labor, and it's kind of it's a dirty labor of, but it is between mother and your child. Still, it's very intimate, and there is a love, for your child that is very big part, of that exchange, happening in that labor. So I just had to use that labor to contrast it in this new system of, capitalism. So you see in the installation, there is a conveyor belt, and they're painted in very glossy, shiny Coca-Cola red. And on the conveyor belt, you'll see baby onesies that's been wrapped in paper skin. They are very bleached, so I used the white paper skin to wrap it, and you just kind of see the hint of, the patterns of little cute, patterns of the onesies through that layers of paper faintly. So they're kind of looking as if they're going through the system, getting packaged and be shipped, it's going to be shipped out. And toward the end of it, there's a baby mobile with the alphabet and basic numbers. And underneath there is like crystals that is kind of giving almost like a glorious endpoint of that. Because and I just wanted to talk about, how as a mother, this is very precious, memory. When I look at this little tiny onesies, I have a bodily reaction. I'm like, there was just, because I visualize those little chunky bodies, little shoulders and, chunky thighs, they're turning and tossing while you're trying to change the diaper, right? So I have that kind of very visceral memories of that moment. But it was so tiring. My reality was, yes, I was mad at my husband not changing diapers. I had to do it all the time. And if Amazon had really good diapers, service, that all I had to do is just pull it off and put it in this bag and send it, and they'll prime it back all nicely clean and folded and back to me in 2 days. I would have totally given up this privilege of diaper change and given it over to Amazon. So it was my work is all based on reality and brutal honesty. I'm not going to pretend that, oh my goodness, my motherhood was amazing. I was a, amazing mother. I was always there, full-heartedly willing to meet all their needs. No. So it was kind of opportunity to talk about that in an honest way. So I'm not really criticizing that system because I'm in that system already. but it was just kind of chance to really contrast that, this loving, intimate labor. And the way you see this conveyor belt, it's hard not to imagine the invisible labor that is standing behind the conveyor belt too. So I want to really connect, there is a connection between these labors. Yeah.
I think the thing I love about your artwork is how authentic it is to you. That, like you said, you're not telling any lies. You're not sugarcoating it. It is what it is, but it's an interpretation that is completely authentic to your experience. And I think to most mothers' experience. So I love that about your artwork.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, I'm just like sitting here and like all smiling and laughing and, but yeah, it was hard. But it gives me a lot of good projects.
You had to toil for your art.
Oh, again, Sammy's solo exhibition is called Remind Me Tomorrow, and it shows through July 17th at the Emmanuel Gallery on the campus of University of Colorado, Denver. I'll have all the details in the episode notes this week. And from there, you can go upstairs and see a whole other body of work. And I want to talk about that. And that's the bookmaking that you do.
Correct. Those are artist books. And there is actually some paper casting work as well, but mainly what's featured is artist book. And so I touched upon briefly, but I love making artist books. I consider them almost like, architecture projects, total art. That's kind of how I see them. And also portal making that is handheld scale. While, those installations that you will see on the first floor are portals in kind of real scale. So that's kind of how I view, because some people may kind of see, this feel like completely different artists, work. I don't see connection, but it is connected in that way. And I'm still committed to making artist book project, at least one project a year and run possibly edition of that. Yeah.
And this is and you have to go onto her website, Sammy's website, to check out some of the books that she's made. And if you get to see them in person, prepare to have your mind blown, because the thought that goes behind them, and if you have the opportunity to visit with her and talk about each individual one and the thought behind it and who it was for, it's absolutely amazing. These books being so labor intensive in the thought behind them, like, I know it varies from book to book and project to project, but how long can it take you to make a book?
It takes a long time. And I spend a lot of time on researching too. But I make maquette. I tested version 1, 2, 3. Then that becomes book, because there is a kinetic part. I really think about how story is told through the sculptural forms of the book. So I have to, engineer that. And that is really fun process. I really enjoy, although it takes just quantifying in, on average, I think a couple of months to kind of come up with a prototype, because I have to test all the materials too, different materials that goes in, because some, leather or, needs to be as not just a cover, which is a typical use for bookbinding, leather being cover, but it needs to sometime like work as a hinges that has to open like so many times, not in a just kind of opening, but it needs to actually support and support the structure at the same time when it's, display in a certain way. So I have to kind of test a lot of things. So it takes a couple months prototyping. Once I have certain idea, then I may take a month just finalizing the form and kind of finishing that first design that I see it as the actual design that could be additioned after that design.
And this whole process, your architectural background and your design background really help facilitate this work, that experience, that education, right?
Really good at model making. I really enjoy that process. So yeah, that is very helpful. Those kind of skill set that I got. And I was actually shocked meeting one of the former architecture student, because they don't really do hands-on model making anymore because they can just 3D print it. So I think that's kind of shame. It was like one of my favorite part of building models. But I was lucky enough to have that skill, and I'm thoroughly using it when I'm making my artist book.
They're absolutely amazing. And you do take commissions, correct? And work with the artist and figure out what that's going to look like, and then take that on and give them the prices according to what the project entails?
Correct. I'm very open-minded. I'm not really saying I'll do this, I'll not do that, or I don't really have those. I'll do anything. I'm very collaborative, and I take it as it's really enjoyable for to work with people. And that is kind of how bookbinding traditionally was. There is a printer and there is a sewing person, binder, finisher. There's all this different people working together. So I think that's very nice way of working.
I want to talk specifically real quick about this project you did for this artist, the soil.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? And you can find this on Sammy's website. If you go down into the book section and scroll down, you'll find a whole section talking about the soil.
Yeah, this is one of the early work. I have made a series of cubic book because I see cube as a basic unit, kind of like a pixel being, simplest unit for photograph, image, right? And I see this cube as kind of basic unit of a space, right? So I had an opportunity to work with this very well-known, established artist in South Korea. His name is Ok-sang Lim, and he actually got to come out to Denver 2 years ago, 2019, for his solo show and for a group show that I curated called Counter Art. But he is very well-known person, even I think in art history book. But he was having this show, and title was Soil, and he invited me to do this kind of collaborative book project. And basically, I really study about his art, his philosophy, and I designed this to much inspired by his philosophy and his processes. But the project is overall it's a soil, and there are elements within the soil, which is like flesh, water, metal, and it's all kind of basic, kind of universal element, and it all kind of came out of soil. The whole idea is it all came out of soil, like flesh, like we're born from, and we return to soil. So all those kind of ideas, and I wanted the viewer to experience those elemental philosophy behind each item by actually incorporating the sense of material. For example, I made flash book with a local paper maker and artist, Ray Tomaso, who passed away, I think, last year. But he was an amazing artist and paper maker. And I collaborate with them by making this kind of bone quality paper, and I added like animal hair in one section, and I added like plant material and seed on the other side, to talk about it was actually tragic kind of incident that happened in Korea. This artist was really talking about the animal right, because there was a whole kind of mass killing of the farm animals because of the epidemic of the mouth foot. disease.
Hoof mouth disease, yeah.
Yeah. So they had to slaughter a lot of animal, and they just had to kind of put them into just this big, they had to dump them all into the ground. And he was an activist, environmentalist. He wrote a lot of kind of criticizing poems about it. So one side I used that bison hair embedded paper, and I kind of burnt his poem using laser cutters. So everything was just kind of with the chart. And so it became very expressive form. As you're reading, turning pages, you could see kind of burnt smell of hair, even because paper itself had the hair. So, it becomes very, visceral. I really wanted the whole experience of reading will be as intense as possible to support the story. So that was one of the book. And so, there are many elements that is kind of embedded, hidden, or display, and that you could just really hear it, experience it, learn in a different way, more interactive and tangible way. Having to imagine that, just listening to me talking about it would be very challenging. So I invite you to come see the show and the video on my website too.
And when you make these custom books, you do an edition, right? Like how many do you typically do? Like 10, 15?
Yeah, so this level of complex book project, I kind of draw a line and I'll just make 10. And and this book is collected at different public institutions, including like Getty Research Center and Spanish National Libraries. So it was like, I think I made it maybe about 6 of them. And I have all the cut materials and everything ready to assemble to complete 10. But I haven't finished it yet because I was sort of ready to move on because of the labor intense part of it.
So how much would one of these, if you said that these are in private collections around the world.
Yes.
How much does one of those cost? Because it's so labor intensive and there's so much time and effort put behind it and the materials.
Yeah, I think those cubic books are anywhere from like 4,000 to 5,000.
They're absolutely amazing. And like I said, if you get the opportunity to go to the Emmanuel Gallery, go upstairs and check out these just amazing books.
Yeah, one perspective that I can throw is that like this it's a cube, has a 6 sides, right? And those are all unique, one of a kind intaglio print. And each pages, they're printed and, and hand bound, handmade, everything, right? So yeah, there could be a kind of little initial shock, when I say the price, but once you see it, you understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they're absolutely, I haven't seen them in person, but just looking at the photographs and watching your video on those, they're absolutely gorgeous. The way some of them unfold is just incredible, complex. I was watching it unfold one. It was like a trick of the eye. It was like watching magic. It was like, I don't understand how that did that. So I can't even imagine like the creativity that goes into these books is just amazing. Because I've never seen anything like it. So,
thank you. I must thank my mentor, master bookbinder, that I learn, different way of making book. His name is Daniel Kim. He's in East Hampton, Massachusetts, and he really taught me to think about, hey, if you were to bind a book about this person who's extremely shy and introvert, would you make it using portfolio format that it was just wide open, just flat, like maybe you would, adjust the sewing that it would be resisting to open up, and how just everything about the reading experience needs to support the story. So he was really amazing mentor and amazing artist and bookbinder who taught me to think about that. And I'm very grateful that I have a great mentor.
What was the catalyst for you to go work with him and learn this?
So we took a field trip. My architecture school, one of the professor took us to his bookbinding studio. And I'm like, what? Bookbind? We're going to bookbindery as a field trip. But I was blown away. Yeah. And I was just watching his work, very inventive. And I was just standing there and my heart was beating, like pounding like crazy. And I just went up to him like right after demonstration was done, that whether I can start an internship. And then he took me in and I worked with him 3.5 years, And while I was learning about it, I learned why I was interested in architecture. It is really that, how good architecture, good space, as you're walking through it, experiencing the space with all the elements, it is telling a powerful story that you can experience. And that's how I, realized, that's why I was interested and drawn to architecture. Me being able to make these books is really nice way to part with actual field of architecture, because I really much love that field, but I feel like I'm much like doing it, So I still really see making these as a spatial making, bringing a lot of spatial thinking into it, architectural art. So it's great.
That's beautiful. So how many books have you made so far over the course of time?
I made a lot. And some are more elaborate, some are simpler. And but I have made a lot since 2005. That was my first book. And I've made, many.
So it runs the whole gamut from being, relatively straightforward to these very complex.
I don't think I ever made relatively straightforward.
Oh, okay. When you said more simple or however you described it, I was thinking, well, maybe more traditional, I guess. Yeah. And but not even that. They're all pretty complex in their own ways.
It could be simpler, but different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go check them out. Prepare to have your mind blown. I was going to ask you, you did this residency at Redline. Was that your first residency that you had or had done?
No, that wasn't my first residency, but I've done my first residency was in Spain, in Salamanca, Spain.
And how did you go about getting that involved with that?
Yeah, that was actually a competition that I won, and it was a award. And at the time, my first kid was very young, and I almost not wanted to take that, but that was a very amazing that I actually got to go and experience it, and how I spend like 24 hours a day was just either all about meeting my basic necessity to live, or making art. And that's when it was very important that I participated in that residency, and coming back from it, I decided to become an artist, full time. And I told him, I gave me permission. I remember vividly that I said, it's okay if I don't become a good artist. I just want to, be an artist.
What was your takeaway from your Redline experience? We've talked to a number of people that have been able to participate in that and have shared with us what they got out of it. What did you get out of that residency? Yeah,
Redline I'm just forever grateful for my experience at Redline. Redline is really amazing. If you're a local artist, I strongly encourage that you apply for Redline. It was something that I was able to do because although I was able to go to overseas residency, they are relatively short term because I have young kids that I need to, take care of. There are times that I've taken them with me, and there are times that I had to arrange, caretaker. But Redline was something that I could still live my life as a mom and go and do. And it was for long term, 2 years. So they are really investing in you, making you really a part of family and, a member of that community. And that was really priceless because, yeah, it was something that I was able to do because I live in Denver, and kids are at school, I could go. And because I've been just working from home, being a mom in my little studio at home, I had no connection or network with other artists. And I feel like I have relatively limited connection, but Red Lion actually opened up, a whole lot, new world for me because I got to meet at least Red Lion, alumni, and, they really make sure that they make you be part of that community and beyond. So it's really, really nice. It's really not just a free studio for 2 years. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity. Yeah.
And you have your own artist residency through your small K, or collective small K. Speak to that, if you would, and what how that came about and what you try to facilitate there.
Yeah, so residency is something like I'm a big advocate. How important residency is to artists, I wanted to give back, within my own capacity. So I got this studio. I was able to get a small studio, but it had 2 levels. So I decided to, instead of just keeping all to myself, I wanted to just take the basement, but give the ground floor as a sharing space. And I wanted to also, being Asian American and having really no representation of contemporary Asian art in Denver, I wanted to kind of create a platform to introduce, for local artists to kind of create that network in Asia and vice versa for Asian artists to come here. So collective idea is that it is our project space that, yes, artists from Asia and Asian American community, they can come here and use the space to be connected with the local art scenes. Like, for example, like if you have like a show in out of town, and you go there for installation and opening, maybe, maximum 3-4 days, and you talk to like 100 people at the opening, but you don't really feel connected and you don't feel like you really know the people and you don't have network there. But if you actually get to, spend a month there, and if there is somebody who can, be there and introduce people and introduce the whole network and art scene to you, then you really come out having friends and, having, you feel like you really live there and know people and know Denver. So that's kind of how I wanted to do it. And for people who has participated in collective residency, they have network in Asia, so it is really increasing their world. It has been really nice. I've started 2017, so I had space. I found the space 2016 and went through about 6 months of renovation, and I hosted first residence in May of 2017, and since then I hosted, I think, over 12 people. And last residence that I had was actually in February, right before, the lockdown. And I will have 2 artists from California coming in September for Asian American show that I'm co-curating. It's called Invisibility and Invisible and Hypervisible. Yeah, so excited to resume like hosting residents in out of the space.
Excellent. And so is there a process they have to go through in order to be accepted into this residency?
Yeah, I have an application on the website, and the website link is from, I'm currently using free Wix-site for that, but I have another link from my artist site that which you put it on the information section, I guess, Studio Small K. If you go to Studio Small K website, there is a collective Small K tab, and you can find the application from that page by clicking the separate website. So link is there.
Fantastic. You're in a lot of public collections. Because of what you do, is it difficult to make money with your art because it's installation and so forth, and it tends to be large?
Yeah, simply the answer is yes. And yeah, it's because it's not really commercial friendly, but and to me, still art market is confusing. And I feel like the current time for me is to create good work because, hey, like, even banana with a duct tape can sell, right? So it's not, like, I don't feel like I really have to create products to sell. I really want to use this time to create good work, but they are kind of hard to sell for sure.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's brilliant. It's some of the most fascinating work that I've seen. I will just outright say that. I mean, I love everybody that comes on this program and is willing to talk with us. And we only get people that, that their art resonates with us. But I just think that what you do is so beyond what I see. It blows me away.
Thank you so much.
It's really unique, and I love your attitude about it. You're creating good art, and you're creating a body of work that I think will endure in the future, and your name will be remembered because it's, at least from my experience, it's very unique and it's well done, well executed, and sincere and authentic. So I love it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you described that perfectly, Wes. Intelligent and authentic, and it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
I've read where you said language, and you referenced both English and Korean. You said neither English nor Korean will do other than art as far as expressing and telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I came at age 16, and I think the part of the brain that allows you to be like, really quick at learning, picking up languages. I think it's starting to close at age 13 or something. So I came right after. That's kind of my justification, but I'm not really linguistically talented. So it's frustrating. Because I want to be fully bilingual, but I know I can't. And that's okay because, I could get by and I could express a lot of things. I can travel and, back and forth, and I could say majority of things and I could do business transaction. But when you're trying to really express your inner self, and that's what I do, and as honestly as possible through my art, that's the only way. I can't really do that in English nor in Korean. So again, I'm grateful and I'm lucky that I have this channel that I can, express. And also, I had an interesting conversation recently with Florence Mueller, who's a curator at the Denver Art Museum, who's French. It was just like last week we were having this conversation about, not being like, talking about, our mother tongue. People assume that you have fully, expressed yourself 100%, but not being native with that language, people give a little bit of room, maybe benefit of doubt. They think that even if you said maybe just, this much, people think that, since that's not her native language, maybe there is maybe that much that is kind of unexpressed. So I'm not really talking about just the negative side of not being proficient with the language and unable to express fully. I'm actually also talking about the other side of the benefit, that people think that there's more that you're able to express because it's not your mother tongue. And I think that's a kind of great I mean, who's going to just kind of give you that benefit of doubt now, right? So that's kind of nice thing about having accent and people knowing that it's not my first language. But language is, I don't know, it's just big flaw.
Right.
Yeah.
It's inadequate, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, through your art, you're able to express and storytell,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to express emotions. You're able to express, you're able to make statements,
Mm-hmm.
a multitude of things to make people feel that where words would fail, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
I think poetry and music do the same thing. It's a way to express that's broader than what you could just say in just words. You know, that the use of metaphor and art and visual art is the same thing. It's a metaphor for what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else that you have coming up that you want to talk about maybe later on this year or in further out 2022 even?
Sure. So July 30th is the CVA show with the armor. And then we have, I did mentorship called, it's an IFAB program, came from New York. And they selected platform to carry out their immigrant artist mentorship program. And so I have done that beginning of the year. And with the mentor and mentee, we're having a show at the Bridge Project Space. I know I heard the podcast and I'm very excited to have a show there in that space. So that's going to be in August. And I have a show that I co-curated called, and it's about the Asian America. It's a humanity and art exhibit that's going to be taking place at Red Line on September 10th. And I am in October. I'll be having a group show in Washington, D.C. about identity. And I'm taking my street art cart there. So I'll carry out the table setting exercise in Washington, D.C., which I'm very excited about. And I also started working for Art Student League as their part-time faculty member. So I'll be actually showing architectural bookmaking. I'll be teaching that class at Art Student League, I think in September or October. The date hasn't been set yet. So that's kind of like from now till like October. I have a lot of things going on, plus moving.
When do you sleep?
I sleep actually very long. I usually sleep as soon as I put the kids down at 8. I usually go at 9. Yeah. And I wake up at 6 a.m. So I sleep pretty long time.
You're amazing.
Yeah.
I really...
I'm really good at juggling.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're a mom. That's what moms do, right?
Yes. Motherhood taught me. Yes.
And then you throw the art in there and bam, you're a time management magician.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. I'll take that.
Well, I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us, because this has been enjoyable.
This has been very enjoyable for me too, kind of therapeutic too. Yeah. And, just be able to talk to another grown-up instead of like 5-year-old and talking about. So I very much appreciated your interest, wanting to talk with me in depth about my art and process and all the backstories.
Thank you so much. Again, it's just been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. I definitely would love to have you on in the future, and we can talk about whatever work's going on at that time. But I think you're brilliant, and the work is fascinating, and I cannot wait to see what the next thing is and how all this transpires. So thank you. And I look forward to doing this again with you and seeing you in person again sometime soon.
Thank you. It was lovely. Wes, when you're in Denver, I'd like to meet you in person too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you. I'll let you know.
Sounds good.
All right.
Again, the show at the Emmanuel Gallery at University of Colorado Denver campus is called Remind Me Tomorrow. It'll be closing just a couple days after this airs. It runs through July 17th. Go down, do yourself a favor, experience it yourself, say hello to Sammy, and go support local art. For the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.